Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel, and this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have lots of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first we are going to talk about the Zaporizhzhia direction, where the Russians, according to information we received from neutral mappers and from pro-Russian resources, managed to improve their position significantly. The Russians managed to secure the territory, the landfields and the fortifications and the strongholds around the village of Vuhledar. So this is the situation on the ground by the end of the 23rd of October, and this is the situation on the ground by the beginning of the 24th of October. And we see that the Russians, according to this progress, are moving in the direction of the villages by the name of Uspenovka and Novomikhailivka, with the purpose to cut the roads, main supply roads between the villages of Velika Novoselovka and the town of Gulyai-Polye. We got very interesting video from the town of Orekhov. In this video we can see the Ukrainian tanks that were moving through the almost destroyed building. The Ukrainians are regrouping in this direction because, according to information we have, the Ukrainians are expecting the beginning of Russian offensive operation in the direction of the city by the name of Zaporizhzhia in the very near future. Now let's talk about the Vuhledar direction, where we have also additional changes on the ground. This is the situation in the area by the end of the 23rd of October. The Russians just secured this tree line by sending additional forces to take under control the Ukrainian positions, and as a result of clashes the Russians managed to take this territory. And by the beginning of the 24th of October we got additional changes on the ground, and we see that the village of Bogoyavlenka is already half encircled from the southern direction. At least this information was confirmed by neutral mappers, by pro-Ukrainian sources and by pro-Russian resources. Now let's move further. And let's talk about the situation between the villages of Tsukurina, town of Gornyak, and town of Gurachovka. According to information we have, during the previous 24 hours, the Russians managed to improve their position significantly. Just yesterday, the Russian sources of 114th Motorized Brigade published the video of how they were raising the flag in the most western part of the village by the name of Izmailovka. We got this video yesterday, and based on this video we have adjusted this part of the map, and today by the beginning of the 24th of October we got additional changes on the ground. The pro-neutral mappers reported that the Russians secured the village of Izmailovka completely, and also the neutral mappers reported that the Russians managed to dig in deeper in the most eastern part of Novoselidovka. Furthermore, during the previous night we got reports of geolocations that also confirmed the Russian presence on the territory of the eastern Novoselidovka. In this video we can see several FPV drone attacks on the Russian forces exactly in this area. Based on these reports and these updates, we have adjusted the map in Russian favor and in favor of contested area. Furthermore, the clashes for the town of Gornyak continues. There are very heavy clashes. The Russians are pushing, and most of the military experts and bloggers are saying that currently the clashes are taking place in the southern part of the settlement, and that the northern part is already under complete Russian control. We are waiting for additional videos that can confirm this. Now let's talk about the city of Selydove. The situation for the Ukrainians on the territory of the settlement is very difficult. The Russians are saying that the Russians began the cleanup operation of the city of Selydove, and the Russian sources are saying that 95% of the settlement is already under complete Russian control. The Ukrainians, according to some pro-Russian sources, control just the northwestern part, this area. They are trying to stick as close as possible to the M30 road and to evacuate soldiers as soon as they receive order or as soon as they receive complete evacuation of the majority of the forces in this direction. Of course, according to geolocations and according to different mappers, there are still lots of work to do. The Russians, according to this configuration of map, and you can see this configuration from almost every single mapper, the Russians control just 30% of the settlement. Around 20% of the settlement is marked as contested area. Another 20% of the settlement is in the gray zone, and just 30% of the settlement under complete Ukraine control. So this information is coming coming from different mappers like neutral, pro-Ukrainian and pro-Russian mappers. So this is the situation on the ground. Furthermore, according to information we have, the Russians managed to secure the southeastern part of the village of Vishnyovo and to cut physically the main supply road between the mainland and the city of Selydove itself. The situation for the Ukrainians is very difficult in this area, and now let's discuss additional important things. Now I believe we can start and we can describe and we can probably discuss how the battle for Selydove was developing, have been developing since the 9th of October, because according to my analysis, the final phase of battle for Selydove started somewhere on the 9th of October. So this is the configuration of the ground of the Selydove front line by the beginning of the 9th of October. On the 10th of October, the Russians managed to finish the battle for village of Mikhailovka itself, and the Russians managed to break through the Ukrainian defense in the southern part of Selydove along the railways. And these two victories that the Russians managed to achieve were the breaking points in the entire battle for the settlement. Later, on the 11th of October, the Russians managed to move even further in the northeastern direction and to enter the eastern part of the mine of Karachenka. That was also a very important victory of the armed force of Russian Federation, because exactly from this moment the Russians began the battle and clashes for the mine of Karachenka itself and for the landfill. And during the previous days we've been discussing a lot that who controls the landfill controls the entire Selydove, and if the Russians are able to take under control the landfill of Karachenka, this is going to be the end of the battle for the city itself. And after the Russians took under control the eastern part, the Ukrainians sent a significant number of reinforcements and reserves to counterattack the Russians. And probably for the 11th, for the 12th, and for the 13th of October, there were very heavy clashes exactly for this territory, because we haven't been receiving anything from this area exactly for this period of time. We just got a lot of videos of how the Russians were bombing and attacking the edge Ukraine positions, trying to force the Ukrainians to fall back and to deal them significant damage. While the Russians were fighting for the northeastern part of Selydove, the Russian forces from the south managed to secure completely the central part of Tsukurina to cross the railways, to improve their positions along the railways and to prepare the foothold before further advancing the direction of the Vishnyovo along the railways in the southwestern part of the city of Selydove. And starting of the 14th of October, we started receiving first updates that the Russians managed to improve their positions on the territory of the landfill itself, and that the battle is about to be finished. On the 15th of October, we got additional updates about very heavy clashes in the northern part, and starting from the 16th of October, the Russians managed to break through the southern foothold, and the Russians began moving in the direction of Vishnyovo. First, the Russians secured the flanks by blocking the Ukrainian forces in this dense network of the fortifications. That was a very important step, because without securing of the western flanks, the Russians didn't have possibilities to move further along the railways. But by the end of the 17th of October, the Russians managed to do this, and now the Russians have no problems to move further in the northern direction. And at the same time, on the 17th of October, we got the first reports that confirmed the Russian additional progress exactly along the railways. Some pro-Russian sources reported that the Russians even managed to cut the main road between the city of Selydove and the town of Kurakhova. And after the 17th of October, almost every single day, we receive more and more updates about additional Russian progress. Somewhere by the 19th of October, the Russians have finished the preparation for final battle for the northeastern part of Selydove, and the Russians, as you can see according to this video, began full-scale artillery preparation. The Russians were bombing and attacking the Ukrainian positions with FPV drones, with artillery, with FAPs exactly in the northeastern part. And right after the 19th of October, by the beginning of the 20th of October, the Russians managed to take under control the mine of Karachenka completely. There were just several positions that were under the Ukrainian forces, but the Ukrainians were about to retreat from this area. On the beginning of the 20th of October, we start receiving first updates from pro-Russian sources that they managed to reach the outskirts of the village by Vishnyovo. And by these attacks, the Russians managed to cut the second supply road of the armored forces of Ukraine in the city of Selydove. By the 21st of October, the Russians managed to secure the landfill and the mine of Karachenka completely and to establish their ice positions on the top of this landfill, which allowed the Russians to see the entire city of Selydove itself. Furthermore, from the southern direction, we got the first map updates that the Russians reached the outskirts of Vishnyovo. By the 22nd of October, the Ukrainians, realizing that they are no longer controlled the mine and the landfill of Korotchenka, began retreating process from the eastern outskirts of Selydove into the direction of the central part. So this is the changes on the ground just for one day. But of course that wasn't enough, and by the 23rd of October we got the reports about the Russian significant progress in the southeastern part. We have already discussed this video yesterday with the Russian flag, and by the beginning of the 24th of October the Ukrainians retreat even further from the central part, and now the Ukrainians, according to different sources, control just 5% of Selydove, and the Ukrainians are about to lose the control over the village of Vishnyovo. So this is the battle. This is exactly how the Russians were attacking from the northern flank and from the southern flank, and the Ukrainians didn't find a solution how to fight these tactics, and now the Ukrainians are forced to fall back from the settlement, trying to save the personnel. Currently there are very heavy clashes for the Terikon and for mine of Novogrodovka III. This territory is marked as contested area because almost every single day we receive the videos, either both from pro-Russian side and pro-Ukrainian side, of very heavy clashes for this territory. The Ukrainians decided to hold these lines as long as possible because the Ukrainians understand the longer they can hold this landfill and the mine, the longer the Ukrainians will be able to hold their lines further in the direction of Mirnograd. But the Russians are not counting their soldiers as well and their forces as well. They are sending more and more troopers. Both sides are sending more and more troopers, and the clashes for this landfill are very heavy because, once again, if Russians can take this, then the next target is going to be the Pokrovsk agglomeration. Now let's move further. As for the city of Toretsk, we haven't received anything, just a small update of map. According to pro-Russian mappers, the Russians are saying that they managed to enter the central part of the village of Petrivka and Sherbinovka. Now let's move further. We have very interesting updates from the southern Kupiansk direction. The pro-Russian sources reported that the Russians managed to enter the northern part of Terny. Also, this information was confirmed by neutral mappers. So most likely during the next 24 hours the Russians will secure the village completely, and the Ukrainians will fall back towards the village of Yampolovka. So the situation here develops very dynamically. As for the northern Kupiansk direction, we haven't received anything special during the previous 24 hours and during the previous night. The same story, we haven't received almost anything interesting from the Sudzha direction. Just small correction on map. According to pro-Russian sources, there was a video that shown us the movements of Russian soldiers already in the eastern part of Volgovka, which confirms complete control over this territory by the armed force of Russian Federation. So this is the situation on the ground, and that's it for the short video. Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for your watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes to my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.